Hello, everybody. Just here to talk about the Bevy animation graph plugin that I've been working on for the last few months. So essentially what I want to, main objective for this talk is just to give an idea of what the current scope, where I'm currently at, and a bit of a loose roadmap for the future for the Bevy animation graph plugin. Quick disclaimer, I know that there's been the recent PRs for the official animation graph for Bevy, which is very nice. But yeah, at the moment, this has nothing to do with that. It's a separate plugin, and it essentially works as right now. It completely replaces the official animation graph. Sorry, the official Bevy animation plugin. So yeah, let's get started. To get started, I think it's a good place to start that I explain why I actually started working on this animation graph, and a bit of where the inspiration for the design was, right? So a couple months ago, I started working on a game project on the side, mostly like a hobby, but eventually got to the part where I need to do a character controller. I made the usual capsule and started moving it around, but then I realized I've spent a lot of time programming over the years, but I really haven't done any animation at all. So the result of that, surprisingly, is that I'm very bad at animation, right? It's true. Look at if you can see on the right an example of this is in fact the clip I posted for the first posted the animation graph on Bevy. And I actually didn't realize what was wrong with it at the beginning until somebody said in the comments, "Hey, you're moving the arms on the opposite side of the body." It's gonna be better since then, but the point still stands. I'm better at programming than I'm at animation. So what I wanted to do is use programming to relieve as much of animation work as possible. So that's essentially using some procedural animation where I can. And yeah, of course, some of the inspiration came from David Rosen's from Wildfire Games talk at GDC. I think like a lot of people that are interested in procedural animation. And once I started working in the animation graph, I found some of Bobby Angelov's presentations on animation programming, and also his open source engine Esoterica has a very strong animation graph system. If you're remotely interested in animation programming, I recommend that you check it out, by the way. It's very good content. But yeah, that's where all this is coming from. So once I actually started working on it, I outlined a couple of requirements for what I wanted to get out of the system. First, like a list here, I wanted to be able to do a lot of things. So we have animation blending, but also inverse kinematics. We should be able to be used ergonomically as just another node in the graph. Eventually, we also want to have physics in, so you can simulate ragdolls for some parts of the body, things like that. And of course, manipulating animations in different ways, like mirroring, chaining different animations. It needs to do a lot of things. I wanted to be asset driven, and that's related to the third point, but let's talk about this. You edit the animation graph with your editor and then save it and instantiate it into the game as an asset. So about the same pipeline as you would use Blender for editing a mesh and then instantiate it in Bevy. Similar thing, animation graph simply tells you how to process animations as a certain source of animation and turn it into something else. And lastly, the graphical editor. So why do I want a graphical editor is, you might not think so at the beginning, but when you start doing animation graphs, they can grow pretty complex very quickly. And trying to parse that, at least for me, from a text file, it takes a lot of cognitive load that you would rather just focus on different things. But whereas if you have it in a graphical editor, you can all see the structure at a glance, and for me, it's much nicer. So that's my logic for it. And that also influences the fact that if you want it to be able to edit in a graphical editor in advance, then it's preferable that it's asset driven. So you can load and save the assets using the editor. But yeah, that's what I want from it. Right now, I would say asset driven is ticked off. We have that. We have a graphical editor. It's mostly full featured, although a bit rough on the edges, maybe. Powerful, I'll let you be the judge of that, I guess. I think it's getting there. You can already do some interesting things, but there's also a lot that's not there yet. So next, I want to talk about, show an example of something you can do with the animation graph. I'm gonna just go step by step in how I build a character controller animation. First, to start with is just basic walk cycle. We can start with 2 keyframes, right? That's half of the walk cycle done in advance. 1 keyframe for a foot down, 1 keyframe for foot reaching. And we take that clip, we can mirror it about the axis, and the walking cycle is symmetric. And then just change the original clip with a flip version, and we get a complete walk cycle as you see on the right. So that's nice. That was not a lot of animation work. Let's turn this into the first version of an actual character controller. Let's do, just like we did the walk cycle, let's make a running cycle with 2 keyframes. We can use the movement velocity of the character to compute the blend factor between the walk cycle and the run cycle, and also a speed modifier for the playback speed of the animation here. Then we apply a rotation to the root bone to make the character face the movement direction, and we loop it. And that gives us first result. But also, I want to point out this parameter graph that we have here. It's not very complicated. It's copy and pasted from the examples, but I'm not going to get into it right now. I don't think there's much time for that. It's just a nested graph that computes the relevant parameters. But yeah, let's look at the result. So a couple of things. First, it does the blending as we wanted, but its movement is still very still. I mean, it's partly due to no grid animation, I'll admit. But I think we want it to be, we can do better just with some animation graph nodes. Second, the jump, we'll see that we don't have any jumping or landing animations. So those are the 2 main things I think we need to fix. Let's start with the jumping. It's fairly straightforward. We're going to need a crouching cycle. So we can make one just as we did before, make 2 keyframes, mirror it and chain it. And now I should point out we are using a floating spring character controller for in the gameplay side of things. If you don't know what that is, it's essentially your character controller capsule is floating above the ground at a certain height that is controlled by some sort of a spring damper system. So we can use the spring, the length of that spring, to blend between the running and the crouching animations. And that automatically is going to give us for free some responsive landing animations for when you land the character, which it's nice. For the jumping, we made 1 keyframe for jumping up, 1 keyframe for jumping down. We can blend it together based on the vertical velocity, and then this part that's not very nice. We're going to take a blend factor from gameplay side that is going to tell us whether the character is jumping or not. But yeah, that already gives us more or less a result that we were expecting. See the jump? Yep, we have jumping and we have landing as we wanted. And we can also crouch, just because why not? So let's address the final point. I mentioned that the running animation feels very stiff and robotic, and that's still the case. One thing we can do is just apply a bit of a tilt to the character in the direction it's accelerating towards. So we do something similar in real life when we're trying to move from being still into running. We lean forwards and we're trying to stop ourselves, we lean backwards. So let's do that. Just apply a rotation node with a tilt that is a quaternion that we provide from gameplay side. And just for good measure to make it feel more natural, let's add a look at node. This is a rotation to the head to make it look towards the camera is looking. I was going to show another video, but I'll just tell you straight away. At the look at node, in order to make it look somewhat natural, you need to apply this thing called a chain length. So that we propagate the rotation to the ascendance of our target node that we're rotating with a certain weight decay. So that you rotate the head to where you want it to be and then rotate the next bone up the chain with a bit less weight and so on for the specified chain length. Because otherwise it can look like it's breaking its neck every time it looks around. And that gives us already a good starting point for a character controller, I think. Okay, so save for the if you put a bit more work in the animations in there, then it can already start looking pretty good. A couple of things that I haven't mentioned. We also have inverse kinematics, so you can add that interleave with any other nodes however you want. You can probably use that to make the fit match the ground position and the rotation of the normal to the ground. But yeah, I can leave that as an exercise to all of you. Nested graphs. I've glossed over it during the examples, but you can have nested graphs that just appear as another node in a different graph. And you can give them arbitrary inputs and outputs, so you can make your own kind of custom nodes. And you have node output caching. So if you have an expensive parameter computation, you don't need to worry too much. It's going to be computed only once per frame. But yeah, that's enough showing off of a feature. I think it's important to talk about what's not there and what I'm currently working on and want to get into the plugin in the future. First is state machines or animation controllers from Unity, for example. This is something that you can find in Unreal Engine, you can find in Unity. This is the engine I mentioned at the beginning. It's actually my favorite of the three, but yeah, it's a common feature for animation system. I think it would be something we should have as well. In particular, you might have noticed that when I was talking about the jumping animation, I mentioned that we were passing a parameter from the gameplay side. That parameter is going to determine the blend factor. It's essentially some ad hoc state machine going on on the gameplay logic, and that's not great, right? Because for just 2 states that we have right now, that's fine, but this can grow a lot and get out of hand. So preferably we would have a nice way to handle this. Animation synchronization, I've also completely glossed over. I made the animations specifically so we wouldn't have this problem in the demo, right? I made just the same length with the keyframes in the same positions, so that, but in general, if you want to blend an arbitrary running animation with some other arbitrary walking animation, it might have some problems there because the foot positioning might not be synchronized, or there might be different lengths. And when we want to blend these humanoid animations, generally we want to have the foot positions from both animations be in sync. So what we can do here is apply a markup some simple markup to the animation clip using animation event tracks and then use that to synchronize the percentage that we are moved through the current event in the primary animation with the same percentage that we for the same event in the secondary animation, right? We get the percentage from the primary, and we set up the time in the secondary so that the percentage to the event matches. We don't have that. We don't even have animations events right now, so there's a lot of work to do there. And finally, this is my favorite one. We need to do some sort of physics integration. That means mostly ragdolls. That's something a lot of modern games have in a lot of modern 3D games. And yeah, we would need like complete just ragdoll simulation for simulating some death animation, but also, for example, a mix of regular animation and ragdoll animation. Say your character takes some damage on their arm, and you want to, for a short period of time, take that arm kind of go limp. Yeah, that could be some interesting effects that you could apply. Like letting parts of the character skeleton go and be simulated using physics, and other parts be driven kinematically using the position coming out of the animation clips. But yeah, still don't know the answer to these questions. I don't know how the specifics of how we would implement this, but yeah, I think that interesting. But it leads me to wrapping up this presentation. All of this is I'm developing in the open. If you find this interesting at all, and you feel like you want to discuss some of this stuff and try to figure out some good solutions for these questions, then just reach out on GitHub or Discord, and we can try to solve this. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and we can probably move on to some questions now.
Manuel, thank you so much. I'm totally unable to do any art myself, so a tool like that sounds definitely interesting to me. The first question that I saw was, where is the asset actually from?
If you mean
the one that you used model in the examples, yeah.
Yeah, the 3D model is the Blender 3D model. Blender human 3D model that they provide for in copyright commons. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
The rest of the game is just my game prototype that I was working on. I just use it for the example.
Ah, well, that's maybe a topic for another talk. So we have one question that is highly voted, which is, can you export the generated animations? Can this be used in a traditional animation plus blending way then?
Export the animation? No, not at the moment.
Okay, so the whole machinery behind it will always run if you want to use that.
Exactly, yeah. That's actually an interesting point. I never even thought about exporting. But yeah.
Food for thought. You know, maybe you can sell the generated animations then on asset stores. Hey, speaking of which, we need a Bevy asset store for that, for you to earn some bucks. Cool. And do you think this approach can beat handmade animations?
I think it has certain advantage and disadvantage. So a very good animator can make much more expressive animations, I think, with more like I guess, artistic vision. But in cases where you're just single indie developer, you're more on the programming side of things, but you still need to get some animation somehow. So I think if you don't really have budget to pay an animator, is using procedural animation where you can very much reduce the amount of actual animation work you need to do, and let you focus on other things, and it can still look pretty good and responsive. I think as long as you manage to feel responsive, so the animations convey the intention of the player, and kind of it's gonna. I don't know. I think they end up pretty decent result. That's
Yeah, I'm surprised that something like that is not already part of a tool like Blender. Are you aware if there's anything like that?
An animation graph for Blender.
Like for procedurally generated animations.
There is, so you can use inverse kinematics in Blender as a tool to create animations. Yeah. The thing is, I think there are different problems to solve, right? Because so when you have animations in a game engine, you want them to respond to some arbitrary inputs from players. So if you and that often involves a bunch of blending and changing from one animation to another, or moving the head for looking at it. If you want to do all of that in advance in Blender and just export the animations, then it's going to go. The amount of animations you need is going to grow exponentially, right? That's what I think.
Yeah, the interactivity definitely would be lost. So the next question is: did you use any existing Node / graph-based UI for your editor for Bevy? Or is that completely hand-rolled?
Right. Yep. So I used Bevy. I think it was called Bevy eGUI Nodes. I can link it in the chat after the talk, but I found an unmaintained library for eGUI that did part of what I needed, and just took it up, moved it into the animation graph editor project, and updated it, and did something, whatever changes were needed there. Essentially. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Gotcha. The next question is: what kind of game are you implementing with this?
Well, it's should I talk about? Yeah, sure. I mean, it's like
TLDR.
It's still a very, very early stage. I wanted to play around with some sort of procedural vehicle mechanics, mostly some kind of hovercraft type style things. See what I could get something fun out of that. But it's at best in tech demo stage. I don't think there's anything worth showing yet.
Well, let me know once there is something to show.
Sure.
Cool. I would say let's defer with the rest of the questions until later. I hope you can stick around for some panel discussion later.
Yeah,
and
of course.
Manuel, I'm downloading the editor right now. Is it possible to work with this with a Mixamo rig?
Yeah, I think Mixamo is animation library. I have to say I haven't tried any assets from Mixamo, so I can't tell you. But if you run into any issues, just let me know and we can try to figure it out.
Yeah, create a ticket. Okay, cool.